Well, hello you people in internet land. Now, if I showed you three items, what would you say their connection is? The first is a turntable or a record player, then a car tyre, and thirdly, a camera lens. Can you see any connection between these three objects? Because they do, I think, have a link, a connection, and maybe, just maybe, hold the key to where you should invest your money in your photography, and the reason why. And that's what I'm going to talk about in this video. But before that, I need to remind you of my E6 subscription and my photography workshops. It's been a couple of weeks since my last YouTube video, so you've probably forgotten what E6 even is. So it's this. It's all that you see on my YouTube channel, but much more, and stuff you won't ever see on here. It's videos, it's e-guides, it's podcasts, it's ebooks, it's image reviews, and it's exclusive discount. 6 great features, and hence E6. The E being the E of ebooks and e-guides, etc. Yeah? And then there's my photography workshops, which should, hopefully, help you improve your photography. You can book a place on one of my group workshops, or for a more tailored bespoke workshop, then a one-to-one may be a better choice for you, on a date to suit you too. Whatever your preference, head to my website where you can book a day with me and come away a more confident photographer maybe. Anyway, back to those three objects. So the turntable is what is known as the source, the first link in a hi-fi system. This is connected to an amplifier, which in turn is connected to the speakers. Now, if you're going to throw your money at something in hi-fi, make it the source, as that's where it all begins. If you buy cheap here, you'll just be inputting rubbish and therefore extracting rubbish from the speakers in regard to sound quality. As for the tyres, well, I never buy cheap. I buy quality branded tyres simply because these connect the car to the road. If these were of poor quality, the car could, well, I'm sure you can guess what can happen to a car if these cheaper bits of rubber let you down. These are the source in a way, and where money should be invested, I believe. So coming back to the camera lens, hopefully you've already worked out what the analogy I'm making is. Lenses matter. The quality of the glass in them is important. If you input rubbish to the camera sensor, then it can only record rubbish. Now luckily, just like the camera sensors these days, most lenses are good. There's not much rubbish out there. You get what you pay for, of course, but cheap is never really too bad. And if that's all you can afford, then it's probably good enough. Spending more on expensive camera branded lenses usually means better optical quality. Though third-party manufacturers do make fantastic lenses too, as I'm sure many of you know. But as camera sensors improve and gain more megapixels, so the demand for better glass to make the most of that is required. Newer high-res sensors are starting to out-resolve some older lenses. An expensive lens can bring other benefits too, of course. Faster autofocusing, better build quality, and wider maximum apertures that let more light in. These all contribute to the overall cost of the lens, and of course it's up to you, the photographer, to decide how important each of these additional factors is to you. So a more expensive lens will, or should, you'd expect at least, to have better quality glass. But this can add weight, of course. Good quality glass isn't usually light, so you do have to factor this in too. But the glass should render the incoming light to give a crisper result overall, a sharper result both in the centre of the frame as well as at the edges, and at the edges wide open too. This is often the key benefit, as once you stop a lens down to say f4 or f5.6, most lenses level out in sharpness where you wouldn't necessarily be able to see the difference between an expensive one and a cheaper one, especially if not doing a side-by-side comparison. That more expensive quality glass can also affect colour rendition, contrast and control of flare too. Better glass can minimise distortion, vignetting, and hopefully reduce the possibility of any decentering issues. That's where the sweet spot of the lens isn't in the dead centre, as it should be. Now, all these extra benefits do cost money, but it's usually money well spent. If you can afford it, do buy the best you can. Your images will benefit, and any picture you take will be the best that can be recorded. However, maybe all of that doesn't really matter. So, back to that turntable that I mentioned. If you're a purist, an audiophile, a hi-fi buff, you'll probably say that you can easily tell the difference in sound between a £250 turntable and one costing, say, £25,000. Side by side, there's a difference between a cheaper Project E turntable and the Lynn Climax LP12. But other listeners may say they can't really hear any difference, so for them, a cheaper turntable is fine. A cheaper £60 winter tyre may be okay, but it possibly won't perform in the wet or on the snow as good as a £300 top-end branded winter tyre. The safety issue of a cheap tyre is another thing, and maybe industry quality standards eliminate my own arguments here. I hope they do, of course. So with all that said, will you actually notice the difference between a £300 lens and a top-end camera branded model costing, well, several times as much? How much you do depends on how much you spend your time examining your images at 200% on a computer screen. How often you print your images at A1 size or above to reveal any flaws. Who other than you is going to see the slightly soft corners of a cheaper lens wide open at f2? If you only print to A4 size, if you only post your images to Instagram, then that extra expense may be wasted. If you only shoot with a camera with a basic 20 megapixel sensor, then most lenses will be good enough.
1, 2, 4.
So, when I choose a lens, I'm weighing up all those factors. I would like the best I can afford, but there is a point where good is good enough. No one is going to see those slightly soft corners in my images anyway. And if they do, well, I'll just tell them it's one of the endearing characteristics of the lens. I bought it because of that. I do like a fast lens with a wide maximum aperture, but f2.8 is often wide enough and fast enough for me, where upping my ISO a bit more instead is going to balance that out. Again, you'll never really see any degradation in my images simply as I had to use ISO 3200 rather than 400. That's just artistic grain. If you saw my images up on a wall in an exhibition and you were looking close enough that you could spot that high ISO noise, well, I would tell you to step back. Step back to a sensible viewing distance. Actually, step back, right back, and get out the door. You're not welcome at my exhibition. Things like colour rendition, colour fringing, vignetting even, can all be resolved and corrected in post-processing if needs be. And as far as micro contrast is concerned, well, I have no idea what that even is, even if any of my lenses benefit from it, and I bet not many of you do either. So for my photography, I don't need lightning fast autofocus. I'm only using single shot, single spot AF, and not relying on fast tracking AF from my camera. I'm more about the decisive moment, and that is for me to capture with timing, not the camera and lens combination. Some cheaper lenses can hunt when trying to focus in low light. That's not good. I'll pay a bit more to avoid that. And some lenses have a plastic lens mount instead of a metal one. I'd rather pay a bit more for that too. Some lenses are weather sealed, and that gives a reassurance that you don't have to stop shooting when it starts to rain. So yeah, that's a benefit too. But I often carry an umbrella with me anyway. I don't want to get my hair wet. Or the rain will just be leaving water drops on the front element instead. So my images may be ruined that way instead. New digital cameras are always getting better sensors with each new release, with more megapixels. So in a way, we are being forced to invest in new, more expensive glass. But that's just what we call progress, I guess. Things do get better in every product we buy. But usually a camera is just bought for the features. It's a tool. It's the glass that you mount to it that matters. but by how much? A better camera won't make you a better photographer, and neither will a better lens. If you take poorly composed images, that's all your lens will see and all that your sensor will record. A decent enough lens and decent camera is out there for you without having to purchase the very best on sale. Spending money learning how to improve the composition in your images is probably money better spent then, and you know where that investment needs to go. Yep, my photography workshops, of course. You see what I did there? I'll see you next time.